want to just say again, good morning. Impact Chapel, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
And all the mothers out there also have a happy day as well, because you got, a happy father can be a happy mother, and on and on and on it goes. But anyway, it's beautiful to be here again at the beach in Haleiwa and to be able to worship with you here this morning. So, I love texting people, and everyone has different ways of communicating with one another. So, how many have ever texted a text message, but it was intended for another person, and it ended up going out to a large group of people? And after you get that, after you pull out that text message, you go, "Oh, I can't believe I said that." So let me just share, because it's kind of comical here, and so my wife had been working all day yesterday, and we had a number of different events that we had to be at. And of course, when we schedule things, we try to do a really good job and schedule multiple events at the same time, so that we have to race around like your head's cut off and you're just scrambling to get from point A to B. So anyway, I sent out this text message, and you're going to shower, right? Now, it's intended for one person, not for a group of 10. So, I realized my mistake, and I sent some, I get a reply back with some question marks saying, "eventually." And I send out some happy smiley faces. And then I write, trying to offset a little bit. It shows I have so many things on my mind. Wrong group text. Big flashing eyes. Sounds like a good sermon illustration for tomorrow, because after you got to come up with something that's going to, impact people. Then the text reply is, "I'm not into showering together, not yet. Give it a few more months, bro." The next one, "Oh, good, glad it was for a different group, because I didn't really want to shower yet. I still have a few more weeks before it's time." I feel like this relationship is moving too fast. I'm certainly not accusing anyone of being stinky. Okay, so at that point we cut it off, and we're all good to go. But I was thinking, wrong communication, wrong message, wrong timing, it can mean a lot. This morning you're going to hear a message on open doors. You're going to hear something about closed doors. You're also going to hear, and I want you to take this in stride, some different principles. I want you to think about the principle of preparing. I want you also to think about that you've got to jump in. I also want you to think about you're going to get wet. Hopefully not for a while. You've got to get back on the board, and then you can ride the wave. I knew we were going to have a large number of people as far as mix between adults and kids, so I thought, man, I asked Brian, I said, "Can you come up with something like a big door?" And obviously, to create a door for me for this message was going to take a little bit of time, but I thought I could do this with a couple paddle boards. So the very first thing I want to show you, and we're going to get into some prayer in just a second, but I want to just tell you something, because I think it's an offset illustration here about paddleboarding. And you're not at a sports or an REI clinic or some other paddleboarding clinic that you might have thought, "Oh, this is what I'm coming for." But I want to tell you something, because it has a lot to do with some open doors in your life. When you're learning to paddleboard, you have a variety of equipment that you can take with you. Two very different paddles. Here, I'll have the people in the first here. Just take this paddle. Pretty light, isn't it? Now pick this paddle, huh? It's a lot heavier. Same thing. Let's give it a shot. Yeah. Very different kinds of paddles. If you look at these two paddle boards, they're very, very different as well. This one here is 11 feet 6 inches, or 10 feet 6 inches. This one's 9.2. This one's kind of flat all the way around. It's great for cruising on nice flat water. You can ride some waves on it, but it might be a little bit harder. This one here has a sharp, pointy nose. When you're out and you're learning to paddleboard, the first thing you have to do is you have to prepare. And part of preparing for something is when you look outside at this beautiful water, you can see, man, there's just barely even a ripple. Not very much waves out there at all. But if there were waves, you'd study the waves out there. And you try to figure out, hey, what kind of board, what kind of equipment do I need? But you're preparing, you're learning. When I first learned to paddleboard a couple of years ago, I really didn't think I was going to be riding waves. I kind of got into surfing, and then I thought, you know what, I should try paddleboarding. You can see the result of me paddleboarding. So I thought, you know, I'm going to try some paddleboarding, and I'm going to try to just go out there and catch some waves, but you have to prepare. So when I'm on a paddleboard, basic, you know, paddleboard stance. So if this is the middle of the board, this is where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be paddling from pretty much the middle of the board. And my feet are going to be like this apart, paddling. Now, when there's waves coming towards me, I continue to paddle and I just kind of pop over the wave. Maybe, okay? Depends on the board. One's easier than the other. But when I'm paddling, and I see a wave coming towards me, I can have a couple of thoughts. Now, again, I'm talking about you've prepared. You know you're going to get wet, okay? It's going to happen. You've got to jump in. You've got to jump into the water, kind of step by faith. You know you're going to get wet. And then you're going to get on that board. And yeah, you're going to fall off sometimes. Trust me, you're going to fall off. Sometimes you bang your shoulder a little bit because you fall on the board. Sometimes you fall off and you end up hitting a rock. You're going to fall off. You're going to sometimes get a little hurt. But if you want to ride the wave, you've got to get back on the board. So you're out there and you're paddleboarding. And you're paddleboarding towards the waves, just going. Then you have to make a decision. Oh, you know, that way maybe I can ride it. So you try to turn the paddleboard with either a wide stroke, or you can paddle this way back, and it'll turn the board. But if you turn the board not in time, and you're paddling, and that wave is coming towards you, what do you think is going to happen?
Flip off.
You are going to flip off big time. You're going to crash and burn. And then, if you can turn fast enough, you kind of look behind you, but you don't keep your feet standing like this. You got to do something with your feet. You've got to turn your feet. You've got to bend down a little bit. So you're paddling in a stance that's like this, and you're balancing so you can ride the wave. You've done really 5 things, okay? You've prepared, you've studied, you do what they call dry land training. You learn on the ground. Stance, paddle. You have to learn dry land first. You prepare. Then, you know you got to jump in. You got to go for it. You jump in, and then you're going to get wet. I'm going to get to that in a moment. You're going to get wet. Then, you're going to ride the board. You're going to get on the board. And then you're going to ride the wave. Let's pray. God in heaven, we thank you we can experience your grace and your love. We thank you for the direction you take us in life. We ask you to bless this time, bless our experience. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. If you have your phone with you, yeah, you don't hear this in a lot of places. If you have your phone with you, you can look up with me Revelation chapter 3, verse 8. Revelation chapter 3, verse 8. Revelation chapter 3, verse 8 says, I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Then I want you to go a little bit further to verse number 20. Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. We are going to celebrate a little after this message. And we're going to celebrate the fact that God the Father gave his life for each of us so that we might live in eternity with him and in relationship with him. And to do that has a lot to do with doors. But it also has a lot to do with preparing. It has a lot to do with jumping in. It has a lot to do with, I'm going to get wet because life is messy. It has a lot to do with getting back up on the board. And it has a lot to do with riding the wave. If you can remember those 5 principles, if you can remember the fact that there's a door and that Jesus is that door waiting for us to come inside, you will get this message. There was a video that went out just a couple of days ago on Facebook that talked about a story that I heard, and I'll just reiterate it just because for some people that may not have seen that. So it was a story I heard as a kid, and I thought it was kind of intriguing then, and someone explained it to me, and I don't think I got it until a number of years later. And it was a story about these 2 brothers, and these brothers hated each other. I mean, not that that's anything unusual. I mean, I had an older sister, and I would say we didn't like each other at all until maybe a few years ago. Just kidding, but we didn't like each other, you could say, for a number of years. And these 2 brothers, well, they would fight about everything. I mean, everything. They would fight over girlfriends. They would fight over who was going to be more successful in life. They fought about who was going to get a better education. They fought about who was going to be the smartest one. I mean, they were 14 years old and they were fighting about everything. And one day, the younger brother said to his older brother, in a fit of anger, he said, I'm going to lock you in a room with all the doors open. I know what you're thinking about. You're thinking about like what I did. That's impossible. You can't lock anybody in with a door open. The door's wide open. How can you lock somebody in with doors wide open? Think about that for just a second. Being locked in a room with all the doors open. No, you're right. It's impossible. Kind of. But it depends whether we're thinking about physical doors or we're thinking about doors in your life. I do not like game shows. I don't know how many people here maybe like game shows. The last time I saw a game show was at Tripler Hospital, and I was there for a doctor's appointment, and I was mesmerized by the game show that I was seeing. I'm joking. I wasn't mesmerized. I was bored out of my mind, but I thought it's the only thing on. I need to pay attention to something. And of course, these contestants, they come up, and they're, you know what, I would say they're prepared. You know, they went to some mall somewhere, a grocery store, to figure out what the prices of everything were, so at least they had an educated guess what they were going to do. And most of them don't necessarily plan to be in front of TV or thousands of people for a studio audience. And, you know, so I was kind of thinking about that. There's a little bit of jumping into something that I'm not sure about. And then I was also thinking, you know, they're kind of getting wet a little bit because, you know, the messiness of a game show, the messiness of life, the messiness that takes place all around us kind of gets there. And so this individual, they get picked, they go up in front of the audience with the talk show host or the host that's there for the game show, and he's got the mic up there. He says, you know, pick which one is it? Is it door number 1, door number 2, door number 3? And you know what's great? I mean, of course he gets choices in this. That's great. Or she gets choices. But you have to make a decision which door it's going to be. If you pick the right door, you get an SUV or a car. If you pick the wrong door, you get a microwave oven. I'd rather have the SUV. the call. That's just a little simple thing about life. But if you were kind of talking about these doors, I started thinking about all the doors that took place in a very, very powerful individual in the Bible who was a priest, he was a prophet, he was a father, he was a leader. He had all these things about him, and his name was Moses. I am not going to go through the whole 5 books of Moses so that you have a great understanding of him, but I'm going to give and share with you in brief some of the things that Moses experienced that have a lot to do with preparation, have a lot to do with jumping in, have so much to do with getting wet. Remember, the Red Sea got wet a little. Has to do with getting on the board, and has something to do with riding the wave, because he was willing to go through some open doors. So here's kind of what Moses did. When we look at the life of Moses, I want to tell you, Moses was adopted. You know, people don't think about that, but he was adopted. His mom and dad were worried about his safety because of the Egyptians and the Hebrew people and all the turmoil that was going on in that land. And again, if you want to read more about it, it's in the book of Genesis. It's too hard to go through everything, but I'm giving you a really, really short version of it. And there he is. Moses, he gets sent down the river Nile in a little basket that they say is made out of reeds. And Moses grows up in an Egyptian palace. He's adopted into a family of Egyptians, a family of the Pharaoh. It's like being in the king. He goes through one life story into another life story with a new family. And in that new family, something amazing happens. Moses has open doors all around him. I mean, he has doors of opportunity. He has doors of education. He has doors of success. He has doors of wealth. He has all these open doors. He has so many choices in his life. He can walk through any of those doors. And I was thinking, man, we have doors of opportunity and doors of success and doors of privilege. Privilege, I'm talking about the privilege we have of being able to come here and experience Jesus. We have all these open doors in our life. And so Moses, for the first 15, 20 years, he's in preparation to where he's going to be. His newfound family, they're preparing him with education. They're preparing him with doors of opportunity. And Moses, I think he takes advantage of what he can. And he goes through some of those open doors. And then something happens in Moses' life, like it happens in each of us. So not only is he preparing, Moses is going to start getting wet. That's right, wet. I'm not talking necessarily rain or the ocean. But he's going to get a little bit of, he's going to get wet. And when I'm talking about getting wet, I'm talking about the messiness of life. I wish that when you prepared for life, from the time you were a baby to the time you went through college or high school or whatever it was, you had your prep time, that when you get yourself a job and you get married and you have all these, that you had all the plans in front of you, and that you could just kind of go through those open doors continually, and I'm just gonna get, there's not gonna be any problems. So Moses prepared for years, and all of a sudden he gets wet. The messiness of life happens. And what happens in Moses' life? He sees an Egyptian and a Hebrew fighting. And what he really specifically sees is he sees this Hebrew person being abused and beaten by this particular individual. And Moses does something. Injustice, justice raises up inside of Moses, maybe in a fit of rage, but he decides, I'm going to take justice into my own hands, and he ends up hoping that nobody will see him, but he kills the Egyptian. He thinks he got away with it. He thinks that somehow this open door in life for him to be able to make that kind of decision was pretty easy. But all of a sudden, Moses experienced this, oh, I'm in trouble. Because a couple of individuals saw Moses. They saw what Moses had done. And Moses got scared and he ran away. Remember I talked about preparing? I talked about the busyness of life, about that you've got to jump in and then you're going to get wet. Moses is still, I hope we're all lifelong learners. We should all be about learning something new. And that's what really was Moses. Moses goes from being raised in this palace by adopted parents, and then he goes and has all these successes taking place. He has all these open doors that are happening, education, vocation, what he wants to do. He sees some injustice. He makes a decision. He jumps in. The messiness of life takes over. He gets really, really wet. And he runs away. In the course of him running away, several major events happen. He gets married. He gets married, has a family. And then one day, while Moses is tending to a flock of sheep, we're going to go back to preparing. Moses is humble. All of a sudden, some doors that were open, they're still open, but now he's running kind of scared. And those doors that he used to be able to just kind of walk through, he isn't able to walk through those doors anymore. He doesn't have some of the privileges that he used to have as being the family member of a pharaoh. He's kind of stuck. He's kind of locked in a room with all the doors open. All these opportunities around him, but what is he? He's a shepherd. And then he sees something. He sees a tree in the background, and it's burning. It's burning. He's curious. I would be a little curious too. I mean, if I saw a tree that was burning, I have one couple options. Oh, it's burning. Maybe we should call the fire department. 2, it's burning, but it's not like going apart. It's just like all green and everything, and it's still burning. That's kind of interesting. I'm going to go and check it out. Moses goes over and he checks it out. He sees this burning bush. As he gets closer, he hears a voice, and it's a voice that he's never heard before. It's the voice of God. You're standing on holy ground. Now, if I hear a tree talking to me and it's saying, you are now standing on holy ground, think about this. It's a tree and it's burning. It's on fire, but it's not really burning. And it's then talking to me saying, you're standing on holy ground. I'm like, whoa. Man, Moses could have just ran straight out of there, but he doesn't. Again, I want you to think about this from the idea of open doors. Moses has the whole world kind of around him, and now God's preparing him. Before his family, the Egyptians were preparing him. Now God is preparing Moses. And he's going to go through this all again. God tells Moses to specifically do certain things, like he gives him a staff. No, it wasn't a paddle, and he didn't go riding off on a paddleboard. But he gave him a staff. And you know, with this staff, he said if you throw it on the ground, it'll become a snake. He also said, you know, Pharaoh is not going to be very cooperative with you when I ask you to do this. But I want you to go to Pharaoh. Wait a minute, God. What? I want you to go to the king of Egypt. I want you to tell him to let all these people go. There's thousands of people who are all in slavery. And when I say slavery, it doesn't mean they're necessarily in chains, but they can't go anywhere. They're kind of locked in a room with all the doors open. The problem is they have no place to go. See, you can have open doors in your life right now and say, I want to do this, but I can't. I often equate this to relationships with people that people have. A lot of times people get scared when the word marriage comes up. Have you ever thought about that when somebody says, hey, I don't know if I should marry somebody, they start talking? Sometimes it has a lot to do with open and closed doors. If you as a kid grew up in a family, and we all grow up, I always say we all grow up in families of dysfunction of some sort. It just depends on how much dysfunction you have. But those things kind of affect us, and they sometimes affect us in so many different ways in our life that we don't even think about it. So sometimes when somebody says, thinking about getting married, and the person says, no, not really. It has nothing to do with the fact that they don't love somebody or don't care for somebody. Sometimes it has a lot to do with the past and relationships you had in the past. And sometimes those things that you think are just open doors, inside, they're really closed doors. They really have affected us in some ways. And that's what's going on with Moses. Moses had this privilege. He had these open doors of education. He had this open door of vocation. He's had all sorts of time to prepare. Now here he is. He's a shepherd. God is speaking to him from a burning bush. And God is telling Moses, I want you to go to the king. I want you to go to the Pharaoh. And what I want you to do specifically is I want you to tell them to let my people go. And Moses, he's a little scared. He says, God, I'm not that good of a speaker. Why don't you let my brother Aaron? And God, agrees to that and says, okay, Aaron will be your voice, but you're still going to go to the king of Egypt and you're going to tell the king to let my people go. And so Moses, he's walking around with this staff in his hand. He goes up to the Pharaoh and he says, you need to let my people go. And Pharaoh is like, no. And so Moses taps the stream, the water, Haleiwa beach out here, and blood appears. The Bible has some really amazing stories in here. And Pharaoh, of course, says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go through all, but there's 10 of these things that end up happening. And there's frogs that appear. If Steven Spielberg could produce this movie with all the special effects, I can tell you this would be a blockbuster. But you know what the difference is? This isn't a false story. This isn't a fake story. It isn't the X-Men. It isn't Spider-Man. It's not any of those superheroes. This is a real person who is doing real miracles because they were prepared to go into battle because that person had God on their side. So Moses had been prepared all of his life. He had faced some various turmoils in his life. But he was prepared. He did all the dry land training. He was prepared to jump in. And boy, Moses jumped in. And Moses got wet with the messiness of life. There were all sorts of things that were going on. He's trying to be a dad. He's trying to parent his kids. He's trying to have relationships with people. He's trying to build family. He's trying to listen to God. And on top of that, he's then going to the Pharaoh, telling the Pharaoh, need to let my people go. You know what? Moses gets to the place in his life where he not only tells his people to go, he jumps on the board. He jumps on the board. He leads the people to a promised land. He leads them through these seas that are right out here. He didn't need a paddleboard or a paddle. We don't know how exactly he did it. But he led a whole group of people, of hundreds of thousands of people, through a sea. And during that whole time, he experienced some bumpiness. He experienced getting wet because of the messiness of life. He got on the board. And you know what he did? He rode the wave. He rode the wave. It had some ups and downs. But what I've come to experience is that in life, you and I, we have those same things that we go through. From the time we are born, we are trained, okay? We are in preparation for something great to take place in our life. And God has given to us all these open doors. Door number 1, door 2, door 3. There's a lot of truths. And you know what? Some of those doors, there's more than one sometimes, and they can all be right. Now, I'm going to caveat that Jesus is the only way to salvation. Okay? The final door. But in our life, we might have many opportunities for what God has called us to do. And God's saying you just need to knock on that door. Doors all around us, but some of us scared to go through those doors. Yes, I'm scared sometimes to go through those doors. When I jumped out of a plane for the first time at airborne school, I was scared to jump out that door. But you know what? You spent 2 weeks at airborne school in the same kind of model. You prepared, and then you jumped in. Yes, literally, you jumped in. You were on that aircraft and you jumped on out. And maybe the landing was a little rough, and that became you getting wet. But you went and made jump number 2 and jump number 3 because you got back on the board. And all of a sudden, by the time you get number 5, you get your little badge that says you were recognized going to airborne school, and you are all good. I wish life were always that simple, and it's not. But there's always some open doors that are right there, if you think of those principles. One final story. As a person who loves sports and recreation athletics, so those kinds of things just kind of, they gravitate to me. But I think every one of us can identify with the fact of someone who truly loves us and puts their arm around us. Derek Redmond was an athlete in the Barcelona Games in 1992. He ran the 400 meters. Phenomenal athlete. He won his first 2 heats. He was in the semifinals. 4 years before he was in the Olympics and he got hurt. Again, I want to tell you, from the time he was 7 years old, he had prepared to be the best sprinter in the world. That's a lot of preparation time. He got to the point where he qualified for the Olympics. He got injured. Okay. You have to jump in. If you're passionate about something, you have to go in all the way. You can't go in 50%. If you're truly passionate about something, you have to jump in all the way. But you know, when you jump in all the way, sometimes you get hurt. He had injuries. He got hurt. He experienced the messiness of life. He makes it finally to the 92 Olympics. He's in Barcelona. As I said, he's already won 2 heats in the Olympics. He's favored to be at least in the top 3 finishers. Chance to win a gold medal. Semifinals. He's in the starting blocks as a sprinter. I'll pick it up here because I can't do this justice. I got into my stride and running around the first turn. I was feeling comfortable, and then I heard a popping sound. I kept on running for 2 or 3 more strides, and then I felt this pain. I thought I'd been shot, and then I recognized the injury. I pulled my hamstring. I pulled it before, and the pain was excruciating, like someone shoving a hot knife into the back of your knee and twisting it and grabbing the back of my leg, and I uttered a few expletives. And I hit the deck. I couldn't believe this was happening. After all this training I put in. I looked around to see where the rest of the field were, and they had only 100 meters to go. I remember thinking, if I could just get up, if I could just catch them, if I could just qualify, I'll make it to the finals. The pain was so intense. I hobbled 50 meters until I was at 200-meter mark, and I realized it was all over. I looked around and I saw everyone else had crossed the finish line. But I don't like to give up at anything, not even an argument, as my wife will tell you. And I decided I was going to finish the race if it was the last race I ever did. Doctors, officials were coming onto the track trying to get me to stop, but I was having none of it. And then with 100 meters to go, I became aware of someone else on the track. I didn't realize that it was my father. It was my dad. He said, "Derek, you don't need to do this, but I'll help you." And I said, "Dad, I just want to finish. Get me back in the semifinal." He said, "Okay." And we started to go around the track together. His arm around my shoulder. We'll finish it together. He managed to get me to run a little bit. And he just kept repeating, "You're a champion. You're a champion. You've got nothing to prove." We hobbled over the finish line with our arms around each other, just me and my dad. The man who's been with me my whole life. And there I was. Me and my dad with 65,000 people cheering. Talk about open doors. Yeah. Life happens. We can prepare for everything in our life. And we can jump in with 100% of everything we've got. And no matter when we jump in, yes, we're going to get wet. We're going to experience all the messiness that life has. But like Moses and like Derek, you can get back up. And you can get back on the board. And you can ride the wave. Because Jesus says, "I have a door that no one will ever shut. And I stand at that door. And if you knock on that door, I will say to you, come on in. Come on in." That's what Jesus wants you to be today. On this Father's Day, and this is for everybody but fathers. The greatest father in history laid down his very life and sacrificed it for every one of us. And as a father, and as a mom, and as anyone else, if we truly love and care for someone, we don't hurt them. We love them. And we have an open door that no one will ever shut. Let's pray. Hey, God in heaven, we thank you. You're such an awesome God. And God, on this Father's Day, with the water in the background, nice breeze, just beautiful day to be with community. And God, that's what you built through your Son. You built community. And as we celebrate, as we continue to celebrate in music and with communion, We just, God, we just ask you right now that whatever we experience, that we can celebrate your life, we can celebrate your beauty, we can celebrate Father's Day and the beauty of just being here, and God, that you've blessed us. And that no matter what we attempt in life, God, as you prepare us each and every day, and you prepare us to be closer to you, we pray we can take all the life moments that you prepare us with, that you can help us to grow, and that no matter what we experience, that the messiness of life, that we'll always get back on board, and that we'll ride the wave and continue to ride it as you've called us to ride it. It won't always be pretty, but God, we always know that you're there. Put your arm around us and love on us. Because, God, you are what a true father does. Go with us this day. And everyone said, amen.